Hey, Arch Campbell, one of my favorite people in the world, longtime friend slash mentor. Thanks so much for coming on the show again.
Are you kidding? One of my longtime friends, Jason Fraley, and I'm so grateful that you and I are friends and are in touch and can talk movies and life and the rest of it. So, what a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was literally just on your podcast this week as well. So it's one of the highlights to get to come on there, at
Uh,
least, once a month. But today, this is all about you. This is Beyond
all
the
about
Fame.
Arch.
Yeah, all about Arch, Easy Arch, as you were called growing in college radio. Hey, but no, this is Beyond the Fame with Arch Campbell at this time, and we're talking about your new memoir, your autobiography, The Accidental Critic, available now. Now I know you're making the rounds, and I've
Yes.
seen you do a bunch of different interviews, but I wanted to hold off until I read the entire book before we spoke, and I did. So I have so much to talk about. But before we
You
get
are
into that.
probably the only interviewer to talk to somebody who's written a book who's actually read the book. this is this is historic.
Yeah, I know. Well, you were making history. No, we obviously everyone's so busy. Not we, even me. We can't always do it. But with George Stevens Jr., I read his whole autobiography, and
Yeah,
for you,
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
certain
yeah.
few that I definitely want to make sure I've read. But anyway, so I have so much I want to talk to you about the book, about your life and career. But first, let's start by teasing the actual event. Politics and
All
Prose at
right.
February 2nd. What's going on?
Politics and Prose, Sunday night, 5 o'clock, February 2nd, this weekend. Doreen Gensler, whom I worked with for 30 years, will be there to interview me. And I'll be there to read a couple of little passages from my memoir, The Accidental Critic, and to sign books and sell books. And it should be an outrageous evening. I am hearing from uh, a whole bunch of really characters, really unusual characters that I know. Did you ever hear of a guy named Stephen Wade? He
Who
did a
sounds familiar?
banjo show 30 years ago at Arena Stage, and he thinks I launched his career. So
Really?
I got it. He's coming Sunday night.
There's gonna be
Who
a lot of
knows?
careers that you launched or inspired that are going to be there, I'm sure. And we should say it's Groundhog Day. So
Yeah,
if
perfect. It's the perfect day.
this interview might sound like Groundhog Day because because I featured you in one of the very first episodes of this. I think you came in the station in 2016 for your, I think it was like your 70th birthday or something.
70th birthday. Yeah, I had just turned 70 and I had just, I was still doing a podcast and you were nice enough to have me in. And now I'm way beyond the fame.
No, you're still in the thick of it.
Politics and Prose, politicsandprose.com, or just call them if you have trouble with their website, which is not very good. Call them and get it over the phone. And it's a lot of the book is a lot of fun, and it's a lot of stories I've saved up over 50 or 60 years.
Oh, there's so many good stories, and there's no way we can get to them all. So I'm going to treat this next, hour, however long we have you, as just a teaser. This is just the rock skipping across the pond, but you have to get the full book.
Well,
So
I was thinking, coming over, getting ready to talk to you. The title of the book is The Accidental Critic. And, the answer is how'd you get that job reviewing movies? And of course, the short answer is I was in a newsroom and a news director comes in screaming, I want a movie reviewer. Who wants to do it? And I raised my hand. I said, I'll do it. And he liked what I did. And the next day he comes in, Arch, you are now the station movie reviewer. So and that's one answer, but my book is a bigger answer. How do you become to do what you do? And the answer is it's all the people who helped you in the past, it's all the people you met growing up, it's all the opportunities you had uh, that you were able to take advantage of. So it's kind of a short answer and a long answer to the accidental critic, and
yeah.
my career is an accident.
I love it. Happy accident, right place, right time, seizing the opportunities as they come along. But let's go through some of
All right,
the people
here
and
we
places
go.
that
Oh
inspired you.
boy.
So I know you you grew up in San Antonio. You were born, what was it, April 25th,
April
1946?
46.
You know,
I'm
that's
a,
my
ch-
sister's
a
birthday, by the way, April 25th, but
Oh,
much
really?
later.
Well, no
Yeah.
wonder we get along.
Yeah,
Except
exactly.
I doubt she was born in 1946.
No,
Probably.
91. You were the year of It's a Wonderful Life and best years of
Mhm.
our lives and Notorious. Yeah, of course it was one of the great movie years when Arch Campbell was plucked from the planet.
And of course, Notorious is one of my favorite Hitchcocks.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Last time
of
you came on here,
course.
you always quoted, the quote from remind us it.
Yes, yes. We the it's the mother of the guy
Claude
who,
Rains' mom. Yeah.
and he'd figure out that he's having an affair with the spy, and the mother says, "We are protected by the enormity of your stupidity."
And you and your wife Gina
Oh
quote that
yeah,
to this day.
we're protected by the enormity of your stupidity.
Yes, we are all protected
What
by
a
the enormous.
great
But one of the
line.
greats, Cary Grant and Gruber. It's
Yeah.
one of the great Hitchcocks there. But anyway, all right. So you're growing up in San Antonio and born in '46. I loved going through the book, the different chapters of like the places you loved growing up, going to like Josky's store and Hip's Bubble Room and
Oh.
the Nighthawk and all. Like, talk about San Antonio as a town. Like, why did you love? Why was that such a wonderful place as a stomping ground?
It was a wonderful place for me because of my father, who loved to tell stories. My father had multiple talents. He was a painter. He was a pianist. He he was a champion golfer. He was wonderful and excelled at everything except making a living.
Yeah, you say he was
So
really good at the art of hanging out.
he loved to
Miller
hang
Campbell was
out.
his name. Miller Campbell.
And after a while, my mother just got to where she was just wanted to, she just wanted a break from him. So he'd go out at night and take me with him, and we'd drive around the city. And we'd come around by the Alamo and then by the downtown department store. He says, over there, that's where Frenchie's Black Cat was." Frenchie's Black Cat. And they have a sign in there that if you ever walk in and there's nobody in the restaurant, they'll give you a free meal. And they say when I was a baby and crying, he would take me and we would drive around the city together. So I loved the look of the city at that time when I was growing up, because it was heavy with WPA, CCC kind of architecture. My father, for a while, worked for a cigar company that his father managed. And as that, he ran the cigar counter of a downtown hotel and could tell all kind of stories about things that went on there. Later, he ran the cigar counters in downtown areas. One of my favorite books is Babbitt,
Mm.
and Babbitt, Sinclair Lewis paints this picture of an American city in the 1920s. And those buildings and those are the kind of places that I would hang out with my father.
I love this idea of you getting to know the setting and the locale based on riding around in the car and dad pointing everything out like your own tour guide. I love it.
And then the downtown movie theaters, which he saw every movie ever made in the 30s and 40s. And so when I was growing up, we got our television set,
Yes.
and those were the movies that the TV stations showed.
Yeah.
So he would say, "Oh, yeah." And maybe you remember, some people know, when television first started, there was a lot of tension between the movie business and the television business.
Right.
And they cut a deal that television stations would show movies only made before 1948. So
Right.
1948 was the cutoff point.
Hey, not a
And
bad cutoff because that whole
uh,
golden age right before that. So you got to what all do you remember watching, either in the on
uh,
TV or in the
uh,
movie?
first of all of the Busby Berkeley musicals
Of
would
course.
play on Channel 4 when I got home from school.
So
So
42nd Street and Gold Diggers of 1933.
games,
Yeah.
what's
Footlight
the
Parade and
foot with
yeah.
Jimmy Cat?
Yeah.
You and I talked because I saw Footlight Parade a few years ago, and it's still just delightful, and the musical numbers.
The waterfall
Uh,
sequences and oh man, it's unbelievable.
and then and those were the films that you rediscovered in my college years when
Yeah.
the rep movement started. But anyway, 1950s, TV comes on.
Yeah.
First, the afternoon, Busby Berkeley. Late at night, the Hitchcock movies,
Mm.
uh, Shadow of a Doubt,
The early Hitchcocks, by the
the
way.
early
Yeah.
Hitchcock, the great stuff, Notorious,
Yeah.
certainly.
Rebecca, the early 40s stuff.
Rebecca, I dreamed we went to Mandalay.
And then Mrs. Danvers steps into the shot.
And then the ABC station played all the Frank Capra stuff. Mr.
Oh,
Smith comes to town and meet John, meet Mr. Deeds,
yeah,
and
what was it? Yeah,
it
Mr.
happened.
Deeds comes to town, and it
Mr.
happened one
Deed
night.
comes to town.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Yeah.
Meet John Doe.
Oh, I love
That's the
all
one
these
I'm
movies.
thinking of. And of course, it happened one night.
Yeah, It's a
And
Wonderful Life.
and they, It's a Wonderful Life would only show on Christmas Eve. The story of It's a Wonderful Life is in the 80s, the copyright ran out.
Mm,
And suddenly everybody could show it. So it was
right.
showing everywhere. When I was growing up, you could only see it Christmas Eve because they wouldn't show it other times of the years because it's
Yeah.
set at Christmas. But
It's one of my
now,
all-time favorites. I mean, I don't know if I ever, not to tangent too much, but I don't know if I ever told you or you remember seeing this, but a couple years ago in my hometown here in Frederick, Maryland, they have the Weinberg Center, and
yeah,
they
yeah,
would do an annual screening of It's a Wonderful Life. And afterwards, I
uh-huh.
started this event called It's a Wonderful Walk, where I would lead the entire audience out of the theater. They'd come under the marquee, and I would lead them through the streets like George Bailey in Bedford
Uh-huh.
Falls, and
Uh-huh.
we'd go, "Merry Christmas, movie house! Merry Christmas, Emporium!" Just craziness. But I
I
love that
love
movie.
that.
So I
I
love that you grew
love
up
that.
with it.
I that is such a one. I should come up there and go on that walk with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's
Let's bring it back.
such
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah. So
And
Capras, the Busby Berkeleys, the Hitchcocks, and of course I know the like the Universal monster movies were also big for you.
oh God! So when I was 12 years old, Shock Theater came on my local station, and the announcer, the host of Shock Theater, also did the kids show. He was Captain Gus, but at night he was the host, and he had this goatee and a big black hat and a cape on. He would wear this cape, and they criped they stole the opening. There's kind of a black and white weather scene, and the announcer says, "Tired of the everyday routine, ever want to get away from it all, then prepare yourself for a shock." And then the thunder and lightning roll, and this hairy ape hand comes in
Oh
and
wow.
pulls the card away, and then you're in the laboratory of this castle.
Wow.
And they wouldn't have commercial breaks. They would say, "We'll be back to the laboratory after these words."
So this is
And
what, like Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi's
you,
Dracula, all that stuff.
you started in order. First Frankenstein, then Dracula, then the Mummy. And you
Yeah.
know how much I love the Mummy.
Yeah, just check
The,
that out a
oh
couple years
man,
ago.
it's so cool because it's like reincarnation. Her
Yeah.
soul has
Yeah.
gone to this modern woman.
Yeah.
She stares out the window. Oh, modern Cairo. Oh, so many cars and buildings.
Yeah.
How I wish I had lived. And of course
I love
she
it.
had.
So
And
Dracula and
then
Frankenstein were 31, Mummy's 32, and then what?
uh,
Invisible Man 33, Black Cat
Invisible Man,
34,
and of course the
Wolfman
Wolfman,
41. Yeah.
Wolfman, and then all the sequels that came along with
Yeah.
them. But those five or six, Frankenstein, Dracula, uh, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man. Did you ever see that the guy did the bit on the Invisible Man where he wasn't invisible and he was jumping around this bar naked
No.
and everybody he's
Like,
running
by the way,
around
you're not
naked.
invisible.
I'm the Invisible Man. Ho, ho, ho. And he wasn't.
Oh, that's great.
So good. And then you watch all the sequels, Frankenstein's Son and the Bride of Frankenstein.
Right.
So good. Dracula's Daughter. And
And
then
Abbott and Costello come around in what, like 48 and start
that's right.
meeting the
Yeah.
monster. But
Well,
all right, so you're watching all those with your dad, a huge influence on you. And then sadly your dad tragically passes away while you're what
yeah.
in college in
Yeah.
Austin, University of
23
Texas.
years old. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But
So that must have been a heavy burden. So then who are your then, in his absence, who become like your, let's say, career mentors? I know there's like a speech teacher and a college broadcasting teacher that you
mhm,
shout out in
mhm.
the book. So remind our listeners who was the big,
When I
mentor.
was in high school, I took a speech class and I finally found myself in that speech class. I had tried all these other things, music, and I failed at that. Photography, we went looking for interesting pictures and they kicked us off the staff because we had wandered off too far. So then I took this speech class from a teacher named Betty Ann Jannert, and she really encouraged me and started giving me A's on my speeches. And I did an after dinner speech about cutting my leg with a lawnmower and spending a week in the hospital.
Man,
Actually, I stole the material from Irwin S. Cobb, if you know who that
really?
is. He was a 1920s humorist, and he had done something on being in the hospital. One of his lines was, they gave me something that was pre-digested, but they didn't tell me who digested it. I don't think I used that line, but I had read that. So, I did my own speech like that. And a friend of mine and I decided we would try out for the talent show. And the talent show was run by this formidable woman, formidable, just laser-eyed, dramatic. She could get into the balcony and project her voice all the way to the stage and the other way around. And so we try our little jokes out, and she calls us forward. She says, "Boys, you stink. You're
Is
not going to be in my talent show."
this Gene Longwith?
Jean Longwith.
Yeah.
And
But you
she
were bit by the bug, right? The
she
hearing the crowd.
she turns to me. She says, I want you to MC my talent show." And that was everything to me because they changed my schedule around. I met with her and a group of students, first period every morning. We wrote the script for the talent show, and then the big day comes, and I go on stage, and I get a laugh, and it's like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And she left high school to go to San Antonio College and teach radio and television.
Ah,
So
happy
so I go
accident.
to her, they're saying goodbye to her. I said, "I will not miss you." And she looks up and glares at me. I said, "Because I'm going to San Antonio College to take your courses." And she just,
Yeah.
but she became a lifelong
Yeah.
mentor. And in fact, when my father died a few years later, I went over to see her, and that's when we I told her how unhappy I was and unhappy in the radio situation I was in, and that's when we really bonded. And for the rest of her life, I sent her tapes, went to see her, and they named the radio television building
Yeah.
for her. And I went back and spoke uh,
Yeah.
about what she was like. And
Yeah.
I think the thing, I started that speech by saying, I had a dream about Jean Longwith. I went over to her house and I said, Jean, they've built a brand new radio television building and named it for you. And in my dream, Jean says, what took them so long?
I love it.
and,
I love that you
and
have the excerpts of these speeches and a lot of the
yes,
eulogies or
yeah,
dedication
yeah,
speeches in the book, The
uh-huh.
Accidental Critic, Politics and Prose.
Yes, and if you can't get it on the website, call them and
Call
get it
them.
over the phone.
All right. So yes, and that just goes to show you never know the importance of these early mentors in launching the career. So that's sort of like your college training. I know some
Mm-hmm,
early
mm-hmm.
broadcasting chops you're learning, but let's go a little into like your actual professional, your early Texas newsrooms. How you got into this TV racket. I have three names I want to ask you about.
All
Um,
right.
Bert Ship, Don Harris, and Marty Haig. Let's start
All
with
right.
Bert and Don and remind folks some of the like this is historic things they covered and these are the people you're around in your early days.
There was a guy named Bert Shep at WFAA TV in Dallas. I got into the newsroom because I was working at the radio side of
Mhm.
WFAA, and I got myself hired at a big station in Atlanta because I wanted to go from being a disc jockey to news, and I could do that in Atlanta. So the station did not want to lose my wife.
Yeah.
So
Your first
in
wife back
in
then.
order to she's coming to the book signing, by the
Really?
way. Yes,
So her
we're
and Gino they're cordial.
we're cordial. Yes, we certainly are.
Nice.
To keep her, they said, what will it take to keep your husband here? And she said he wants to go into TV news. So they said, okay, put him in TV news, because it's 1971. Every newscast was expanding.
Yeah.
Every TV station was expanding. They were making money hand over fist. They didn't care what you did. The WFAA newsroom doubled in size almost every year. At that time, I think it had gone from 16 to 32. Ultimately, it got way up over 100.
Yeah.
So I'm working there, and the news director says, I don't see you on the air. I just need you writing the news. And Bert Ship is this fearsome character, the assignment guy in the newsroom, would smoke a pack of Salems every day and line the butts up and growling things. Somebody would go out on a crime story and he would scream, ask him if he feared for his life.
Didn't you cover the Kennedy assassination?
He covered the Kennedy assassination. He
Dallas.
was right there.
Hmm.
He sent a photographer into the sixth floor observatory,
The book depository. Yeah.
depository. The guy got up to where Oswald had stationed himself,
Wow.
took footage of it, and then, and this is in a matter of minutes, the Secret Service surrounded the building and they locked it down. So Bert is down there on the ground, and the photographer wraps up the film and tosses it 6 floors to Bert.
Bert catches
it.
Wow.
And then he went out into the street, jumped into a car, said, take me to Parkland Hospital. The car takes him, drops him off. And he was a fearsome guy, loved to chase fires and wrecks.
Wow.
When I started in TV in the early 70s, people like me, college grads, were coming to work in these newsrooms that had been peopled by guys like Bert, who
Mhm.
were thrill seekers.
Yeah.
He loved nothing better than to chase a fire
The
or
ambulance chasers.
take a shoot of a body.
Yeah.
He wrote a little memoir. He talks about the police found dead body in the Trinity River, which
Okay.
runs through Dallas. So he goes over there, and they'd already fished the body out. He says, "Fellas, I missed the shot. Would you put the body back in?" So the police all knew him. So they
That
put the
sounds like
body
Jake
back in.
Gyllenhaal and Nightcrawler. You got to stage the.
Exactly. So he's taking pictures of the body, talking, that sort of thing.
Wow.
Next, they turn around. The current is going out. The body now is floating out to sea.
Oh my
So
God.
they all have to jump in, swim after this thing to pull the poor guy back out.
Oh my gosh. Well, you have to have a
So
morbid sense of humor in this business, the
he
amount of stuff you cover, you know?
every now and then he would get into a crew car and just drive around and
Man.
just get blasted, and then he'd come in. I feared him. I
Yeah.
was afraid of him.
Yeah.
Well, one day he pulls me aside because he knew I wanted to go on the air. He said,
Yeah.
"Look, everybody in this newsroom can cover a wreck or a fire." He said, "If you can do a feature story, if you can do something that's just a little bit funny, you'll have a place in TV." It was the best advice anybody ever gave me.
Yeah.
The advice is to be unique. And he started feeding me story ideas. He sent me out to a guy who had a herd of goats that when you made a lot of noise, the goats were supposed to faint for my atomic goat. And of course they didn't. And he knew that. And so it's a story about me trying to get these goats to faint, and they
Yeah.
never do.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a great story.
So many,
Uh,
you have to pick up the book, folks. All these great stories of these features that you covered. Absolutely. So that's Bert Ship and
Bird
giving
Ship.
you advice. Just real quick mention. I wanted to mention these other big name like Don Harris, and remind folks,
First
about.
story I ever did. I put the story together. It was about an old soda jerk in Highland Park, Texas. And I go to the producer. He says, "Well, we can do the Anchorman's editorial, or we can run your feature." And so he goes to the Anchorman. The Anchorman says, "To heck with my editorial, run the kid's feature."
Mhm.
So after the feature runs, and it's me at this soda fountain, and I'm making a lot of noise with a straw and that sort of thing, Don Harris comes on the air and says, "Arch Campbell does good features." And the news director, the guy who didn't particularly want me to go on the air, heard that. And that opened the door for me. Don Harris later left for California. He was one of the last reporters in Vietnam for NBC. And in 1978, he was the reporter at Jonestown
Yeah.
and was killed in that event. But he is the guy who made my career possible. And he's the guy who recommended me to NBC.
Wow. And to this day, you sort of cringe and don't like using the phrase "drink the Kool-Aid," right?
No, I really don't. I
Because you
really
remember
don't.
you
Because,
knew you had an actual
well,
personal connection to it. Yeah.
if you go on YouTube, you can see some of the things Don Harris did. The first day they put a metal detector in Love Field, which was the airport at the time, he took two people down with him, and he sneaked two guns past the metal detector.
Right.
And Delta Airlines was called up the station, said, "We're pulling all of our advertising." And to
Wow.
their credit, the station said, "Fine, we'll run ads for American Airlines."
Whoa, whoa. which of
So,
the day of this recording, sadly, tragedy, another the plane
that's
crash
terrible.
in the Potomac, yeah, with the Black Hawk helicopter. We're
Yeah,
still trying to figure out what's going on with that. But man, the news, always breaking news every day.
right.
So that's Don Harris. And then I guess we should real quick, because it's the title of the book, Marty Haig, right? He
Marty
wasn't he the
Haig,
one that said who wants to be
he's
a critic?
who Marty Haig came to Channel 8 to WFAA to rebuild it, and he built it into a newsroom that for many years was considered the best local newsroom in America. And by this time, I'd come up here to Washington. I keep hearing what they're doing back at the city and the newsroom I love, thinking, God, why did I leave there? Why? Why? Marty won all kind of awards, including an Edward R. Murrow Award, and is considered one of the great news directors of the business. So, and was very good to me. And even when I told him I'd gotten this job at NBC, he said, you can do things up there you won't be able to do here. So you
So he
should take the
recognized
job.
that what he
Yeah.
recognized Washington D.C. would provide
Yeah.
you opportunities that you couldn't have in
Well,
Texas.
he had been an NBC guy and
Yeah,
then was a CBS guy and then went to Dallas
yeah.
because I think his wife hated New York.
Okay.
And but he's a giant, one of many giants.
He was like your Jim Farley, who like Farley was to me, in the early days of your
And
journalism.
Farley had that quality, that
Yeah,
same quality.
absolutely.
WTOP, uh, traffic and weather on the eights, changed everything.
Yeah, Jim Farley was a giant. So we were both lucky to have such great lead news directors in our early careers. All right, so that sort of is what now we're at the leap from Texas to Washington D.C. for you. So now we're at you grew up watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now it's Mr. Campbell Goes to Washington to NBC4 WRC. Remind us of those early days when you first came up here and some of those early feature stories, particularly Spot the Pig, baby.
Spot the Pig. Well, I worked for this guy who had been in Los Angeles. The interesting thing about him, Bruce McDonald, is he came to Washington to shake up the town.
Yeah.
As it turned out, it was a miserable failure.
Yeah.
All the things he tried, but he had written gags for Soupy Sales, who you may remember did a kids show where every episode at the end of it, Soupy got a pie in the face. And then he'd done a lot of entertainment stuff. He worked for Don Amici's Big Tent Circus, and suddenly he was a news director. He was been in charge of special projects in L.A. So
I was
he
just
comes
watching
here.
Don Amici in some the Ernst Lubitsch movie, Heaven Can Wait.
Oh yeah,
I just was
right.
watching him in this.
And Don, I mean, he shows up later in Trading Places.
Right,
It seems to
exactly.
me. Yeah,
Exactly.
great. So anyway, Bruce McDonald does special projects in L.A. and Don Harris went to work for him and recommended me to Bruce because he says I want a resident zany when I go out there to Washington. I want somebody people will talk about. So I go to work for this guy, and I'm kind of green and I'm not quite sure what's going on. He calls me in one day. He says, I got this article here. The USDA has bred miniature pigs for scientific research, except now they don't want to do research on them. So they don't know what to do with the pigs. They think people can have them as pets. I want you to get one of these miniature pigs and raise it as a pet.
You became Farmer Hoggett from Babe. You think that around your house
before anybody ever heard of that.
Yeah.
So I got this little pig. I put him in the basement of my house. I put paper in one corner and his food in the other
He
corner.
was paper trained.
He right took hardly any time. He was
Wow,
paper trained,
that's
and
great.
then I got to where I could walk him on a leash. And I did all these stories around town with Spot the Pig. Then there was a singing dog contest. I entered him. He won, of course, because all you have to do is pick up a pig,
Yeah.
and it goes. "Ah!"
Did you sing a song? You did like
I
a back,
do.
like a
Yes.
duet.
Am I blue? Am I blue? Am I blue? Ah! I did that. Pandemonium. I got on the CBS News that night
Oh, it
on
went
AB.
national.
It was national. It was it
Wow.
was it was viral before there was viral.
Wow.
And then finally, the pig is getting up over 100 pounds, even though he's miniature.
Yeah.
He's a pig,
Yeah.
the 20% the size of a pig is about 100 pounds. So I take him out to this country club for pet. There's a big story where I let him go, and we filmed him in slow motion loping across the field to Born Free.
I bet the newsroom is just in stitches. Don't you write that in the book that they were just losing it,
People
laughing?
were just screaming.
Yeah.
Uh, but by this time, the newscast was suffering. It never quite came together.
Because your
And
competition was what? Channel 9, right? Gordon
it's
Peterson and Maureen Bunyan and
run by a guy named Jim Snyder, who
right.
is also in the same league as Marty Haig, one
Yeah.
of the great giants of
Yeah.
local television. And then they decided they had to be more formal. And for several years, I kind of struggled in Channel 4, um, trying to find a place for myself.
So you're at NBC 4, you're Channel 4, you've done Spot the Pig, but I guess it's the station isn't the juggernaut we think of now. That hadn't materialized, right? Right? Because you were going up against Channel 9, and I guess that's where Oliver Jones, our friend's father, the legendary Davy Marlon Jones, is.
Davy Marlon
Yeah,
Jones,
Glenn Brenner is on sports. Like they were the top dog in town at that point.
Gordon Peterson, and Maureen Bunyan,
Yeah.
well known. And, it was a juggernaut.
Yeah.
And we never competed with them.
Yeah.
And so I kind of struggled to find a place. And for a while, I did a feature called Discovery, where I went to all the interesting places around town.
Yeah.
The Ladue topiary gardens, where the hedges are clipped to look like ducks or
Yeah.
or birds or something, dogs, but not much impact. And for a while, I said, okay, let me do the morning cut-ins, because nobody wanted to do them. And my boss said, you want to do that? Fine. You start next week.
There's a tip for all you young journalists, by the way. Offer to do the things on the weird hours that no one wants to do, and eventually you get the keys to the kingdom.
Absolutely. So I'm the morning news cut-in guy, and it comes around to George Washington's birthday in 1979, and I go in there, and it starts to snow, and nobody thinks much about it, and it keeps snowing, and suddenly, and this is impossible to believe today, there was a blizzard that formed that nobody saw coming, and it stopped the whole city.
Well, because Bob Ryan wasn't there yet to tell you anyone about it.
me and about 3 other people were the only people in the station.
Right. Well, wait, wasn't Willard Scott there at the time? But he couldn't get in, right? He was snowed in.
Willard was snowed in. Willard did the 6 and 11 and went out to dinner in between and would come back quite buzzed every night. He used to say, I sleep so good.
That's great.
Me and Mr. Daniels.
My buddy Jack.
My buddy Jack. So,
But you stepping into weather in this blizzard of 79.
because the guy who did the weekend weather called up and said, I can walk into the station and I'll explain what happened. This is like a couple of days later.
Yeah.
The afternoon of the storm, they called Willard on the air, and Willard and the anchorman chatted and laughed, and and they took up this real weather guy's time. So the producer said, "We don't have time for you. Come back tonight at 11." The
And
weather
he quit,
guy,
right? He quit.
on the spot, on the spot. I quit. I'm not coming back.
Wow.
The next day, the boss comes in, just like before. Arch, have you ever done the weather? Said, no. Well, you are now the weekend weatherman.
That story of your career, the accidental critic and the accidental weatherman.
Sitting in the right place.
Yeah.
And we got a new general manager after months of this. And he started dropping around the newsroom. And he started completing. He started putting together a team. He found George Michael, brought George down in the end of February 1980. Bob Ryan traded places with Willard Scott.
Because he went to the Today Show, right? Willard went to the Today, and Bob left the Today.
Bob was on Today.
Yeah.
Bob came down here. So both George and Bob started at the same time.
Wow.
February, March 1980.
The dream team is starting to come together.
Same time, they said, okay, we're going to revamp the newscast. We want you on the end of it every night at 6 and 11. So that's 3 out of 5. Vance, by this time, so many other anchor men had come in and out, and anchor women had come and gone. Vance was the senior guy. So now he had a team of 4 people, and he put us together. And the fact that we all started together as a team on the same time gave us a special bond. One that, an organic bond, one that you can't expect to happen, that you couldn't make happen, but it just happened. And it took several years, but finally they found Doreen Gensler, and that was the ignition. That was the thing. That was the fizzy pill. That was the thing that made everything come together. And they are still a leading station because of that, and because of the idea of teamwork. You're a team. We may not beat them one-on-one, but as a team, we can do it. George, Washington, D.C. had the most competitive sports people in town, because George Michael and Glenn Brenner and the people who would come on Channel 7, that kind of talent going against each other doesn't happen very often.
No.
So it was the team idea.
And you guys had great program flow. Talk about how the order worked leading into Carson and stuff. Like, explain how that was just perfect for a nightly.
Particularly at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock, you got Jim Vance, you got the news, then you got Vance and Doreen in the news. Then you go into the weather with Bob Ryan, the sports, and then they go to me, and then we would go into Johnny Carson. It was program flow. It was exactly what TV stations wanted.
And back then, you got to remember, folks, back then there was only a couple channels. So pretty much everyone in D.C. saw Arch Campbell, as the last person before they went into Carson or I guess Leno later. Yeah.
And, remotes, there were remotes, but people didn't use them like they use them now.
Right.
So lead in was very important. If you got a good lead in, people would stay and watch your news. And then there we go into the Tonight Show.
And then I also love how you started getting your own late night spinoff, because George Michael had the huge sports machine that went, syndicated. And then you had the Arch Campbell show late at night as well.
That was so much fun. Later on, you were on a version of it that I did at News Channel 8,
Yeah,
which was
at the
the
ABC 7 JLA News Channel 8 building. Yeah, later.
that was the bare bones Wayne's World edition. And I think I had the most fun of my entire life
Yeah.
doing that show because it
Yeah.
was so what the hell.
I absolutely loved going on there. That was probably one of the first times you and I met, but we'll get to that later in this interview
Right.
because I want to. So we talked about the program flow, but I also want to tell people you have to pick up this book because you hear some of the really funny behind the scenes like pranks and stuff you used to play. Do you want to
Yes.
tease one here? How about the one Bob Ryan with the teleprompter, like Will Ferrell and Anchorman changing the copy?
Yeah, and I think Anchorman must have gotten the idea for it from
Yeah,
us
yeah,
because Bob understood technology better
yeah,
than we did, and for for most of those years we banged our scripts out on typewriters and paper,
yeah,
and the computers came, and computers got us into a network, and after a while we came to the point that we would write our script into the computer and then it would go into the teleprompter.
yeah.
So no papers, no transferring, no nothing. So the first night we write into the computer. I write my lead in. Arch Campbell is back from Kennedy Center and he's seen so and so. And Bob, this is Doreen's lead in to me.
Yeah.
Bob gets in there and adds the phrase, he's back from Kennedy Center and he's just seen so and so. And he adds the words, and he's not wearing any pants.
It didn't get
Now,
read though, right on the air, but it came close.
no. Later, I had a shot of Bob coming back into the office
Yeah.
after playing tennis. And he hadn't had time to change clothes. So he just had on a coat and tie, his tennis shorts, and he looked like he didn't have any pants on.
That's
We had
great.
a golf course at night in the newsroom.
Like you made
We
a
would,
course in the newsroom.
oh, yeah, we would tee up, go down this hallway. Then we'd go out into the main hallway and then around the studios and back, just slamming the hell out of golf balls,
Yeah.
slamming golf balls into the wall. And one night we were playing, we called it office golf. I hit down on a golf ball and the ball flew up and it smashed an exit sign, glass everywhere. So we ran out of there like nothing, like
I think you
a
say in the
couple of
book like a couple of teenagers that broke a window and ran away.
like we got caught toilet papering the house.
That is so great. Well, speaking of golf, you that the actual golf course and a bunch of the red carpets you covered led you to have some really cool celebrity encounters. Like, didn't you actually golf with Bob Hope and you
I
met Michael Jackson and you detail Oprah and Spielberg, all kinds of people in there. I don't is there one or two that stand out that you want to share here? I mean, you gotta read the book, folks. But was there anyone that you were just in awe of when you shook their hand?
well, Bob Hope at the time I was not in awe of because, as you recall, Bob Hope was very gung ho during the Vietnam War,
Right.
and so we made arrangements. Arrangements were made for me to play a few holes with him, and by the time that event was over, I was in awe of him because he was such a nice guy and was so kind to a rookie like me, and so much fun to be with, and a good golfer. And he was about 85 years old at the time. He
Yeah.
was 85 years old. He was here to do a show at George Washington University, which is not a huge venue for a guy like him. He gets into a car with a woman he doesn't know. She drives him to this golf course to play golf with people he doesn't know.
Mhm.
Uh, and he was such a good sport about it. And of course, tells all of his jokes.
Yeah.
Guy gets married. He says, I got to tell you, now that we're married, I play golf every weekend. I'm a golfer. She says, well, that's nothing. I need to confess to you, I'm a hooker. He says, well, that's no problem. Just put your hand over a little on the shaft.
So good. And it didn't
It's so
at the end of your round, didn't he say you asked for advice or
yeah.
something? He told you
He
to
said,
break every bone, break your leg, break your
break your arms, break your legs, throw your golf clubs away, get healed, and take up tennis.
there, folks. There is
Perfect.
gold. There is so much gold in this book, including like even some dignitaries. Like what you said, you what was it, the National Building Museum? You went to cover an event, and
Oh,
lo and behold, tell us tell
well,
everybody
it
who
was
was there.
big enough. Anna Wintour
Yeah,
of fashion fame was holding a an event for breast cancer, and Princess Diana was there.
Princess
So
Diana.
I go over to interview Anna Wintour, and we're standing there. She says, "May I present Princess Diana?" She sticks her hand out, so I shake it. Oh, how do you do? She's, oh my God! It was like staring at a meteorite or something.
Crazy.
It was the charisma was off the chart
Yeah.
on that woman. So beautiful.
So
And then
crazy. Met Princess Diana. And you said you shook Michael Jackson's hand, but it was more of just like a cold, limp fish or
there
something,
was a
right?
guy here, Alan Kay was
Yeah.
a famous developer, and he bought Marywood, and it was a benefit for something. So they invite me in. First, I run into this guy uh, that was a mover and shaker at Kennedy Center, and he was also a decorator around town. And I'm looking around there, and it really was the Gilded Age. And I say, who decorated this place? He says, I did, you idiot. So then I go over there, and there's Michael Jackson because he was the star of the benefit. And they said, oh, uh, may I introduce Michael Jackson? So I shake hands with him. It's like shaking hands with a goldfish. I got back on the air that night, and I said, not since Elvis visited the White House has there been such a celebrity in Washington, D.C. as Michael Jackson. Well, his people just went nuts
They
about
loved
that
it. They loved it.
because he was obsessed with Elvis.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that I would compare him to Elvis, that was just it. And they immediately got on the phone. They wanted a tape of that.
That was the
It
pull
was
quote.
sitting around somewhere.
That's
Victor
awesome.
Sharguy was the decorator I ran into,
Right.
who was very
Well,
big at Kennedy Center.
there's so many people you've interviewed. You have to check out the book, folks. But speaking of Kennedy Center, I want to pivot a little more into what you and I love, the movie reviews. But speaking of Kennedy Center, there was a
Absolutely.
famous moment where the AFI. I mentioned George Stevens Jr.
Uh,
earlier, but
yeah.
the AFI had a screening room, a theater at the Kennedy Center,
That
and I
thing
think you
I
might have told
love.
this story last time, but just tell it again real quick because I just love the visual of this, the Orson Welles, the fire in the movie theater.
The thing I loved about moving to Washington is when I was in Dallas, the first thing I did was subscribe to New York Magazine because I loved that magazine and the reviews by Judith Christ.
Yeah.
And then I got the AFI magazine. And so when I came to Washington, there was the AFI Theater in Kennedy Center toward the front on the east side. It had been an old like storage area or store in area. And for 3 nights a week, I would go down there to watch their screenings. A guy named Mike Clark wrote the notes for their film, and his notes were so beautiful. And you'd sit there for like 30 minutes just reading his
Yeah.
notes and reading the things of what were coming up. So they had an Orson Welles festival. And I always had wanted to see The Lady from Shanghai because you see excerpts from it, and I'd never seen it.
Right.
So I walk in and they say, ooh, we have a nitrate print tonight. Nitrate. Hollywood, they used to strike films in
Yeah.
nitrate, but they're flammable. But man, they look so good. So he says, we got a nitrate print. So I get up there. Film goes. He meets Rita Hayworth. He's this sailor.
Yeah.
They're sailing around South America through the Panama Canal, and she's falling in love with him. And there's a plot line going on, and suddenly, and there's a big murder scene toward the end where they're shooting at each other in a fun house, a mirrored
With
fun
all the
house.
mirrors, but you don't
And
get to see the mirrors, right?
so, and I really wanted to see the mirrored scene, the mirrored funhouse scene. So we get to the last reel, and you could see the reel change. And Rita is driving over a hill in San Francisco in a '47 Lincoln Continental convertible, and suddenly the film freezes, and then it melts from the inside out, and the audience goes, ooh. And then I hear this whoosh. I turn around and the projection booth is on fire.
Oh,
At
it's
least
so good.
the top reel is on fire. So it had been at this storage area. So they had these big doors. They open the doors. They say, everyone leave. It was very calm, very quiet. So we all file out, and the fire trucks come, and somebody says, how does it end?
but you said last time you told me that I guess just shows the different times
Yeah.
that it didn't even make the news.
No, nobody reported it. Nobody said anything about it.
Today it'd be all over social media. It'd be breaking
Oh
news.
my God, fire at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
No, it was,
Wow.
a movie caught fire.
That's wild.
Big deal. We don't care.
That story reminded me of two things that I loved in your book. One, the fire up in the thing reminded me of the bulb bursting at the Uptown when Kevin Costner was there for Dances with Wolves. You got to read about that, folks. But the other one, when I was mentioning, you're talking about Orson Welles, about how you actually held the Oscar for Citizen Kane.
I have told this story to Ben Mankiewicz and Josh Mankiewicz, who are the grandsons of Herman Mankiewicz, who wrote the script for Citizen Kane.
Yeah, and now Ben, of course, of Turner Classic Movies. He came on our show when Mank came out. Yeah,
Frank Mankiewicz was a mover and player and was Bobby Kennedy's press secretary when he was assassinated, and went to work for Hill and Knowlton. So JFK, the movie, comes out, and Oliver Stone hires Frank Mankiewicz to get him into the paper.
Yeah.
They wanted to promote the movie through the A section of the paper. So Frank Mankiewicz had an opinion leaders dinner at his house. So I go over there, and there were 4 tables, and Oliver would come and spend one course with each of you. So and talks a mile a minute, just so intense, and just like the person I was with said, I've got a brain ache. So I get up to go to the John, and Frank Mankiewicz's wife is in the study. She says, hey, Arch, come here. And, I'm having to pee, but I think, okay, yeah, I'll come here. She says, have you ever held an Oscar? Well, here. And she hands me this thing. This is the Oscar Frank's father won for writing the script of Citizen Kane.
No big deal.
It's the most famous Oscar in history.
Arguably
the only Oscar that Citizen Kane won.
Yeah.
And
because How Green Was My Valley beat it for Best Picture that year. Yeah.
Herman Mankiewicz had to go to the Writers Guild to get credit. Yeah. And he is listed first on the Oscar.
Him and Orson Welles, right?
And Orson Welles.
Yeah. Wow. Then you got to hold that.
I held it.
Yeah.
And then later I wanted to do a story about it, and the family had sold it.
Yeah. And we were talking to Oliver about it, weren't we? They weren't sure, I mean, Ben Mankiewicz. We were asking about whether Spielberg bought it, or there's a bunch of rumors about it, but no one really knows.
Mankiewicz says not Spielberg, but somebody's got it.
Somebody's got it, but Well,
Somebody has it.
you has it. You have it.
I had it for a second.
You had it. You basically won the Oscar for
Boy,
Citizen Kane.
it felt like history. It
Yeah.
was history in my hand. And
And
I
and you appreciate it. You appreciate it.
loved the movie Mank.
Yeah.
And Ben and Josh, th- it was just something their father had to them.
Yeah.
They weren't as impressed as I was.
Wow. And ironically, it all ties in because I think Ben Mankiewicz told me he grew up working for the sports machine, George Michael. I think like or interning or something
He
early
was
in
an
his career.
intern
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
George
Yeah.
Michael's sports machine.
Right.
And
Right.
I said to him, "Why didn't you come and visit me? I would have loved
Yeah.
to have talked to you. I
Yeah.
loved your father." And he said, George wouldn't let us out of the room. George
I
would get mad at his
love it.
people if they fraternized. He did not like that. No fraternization.
I love it. Like just I mean, we're just talking about Ben Mankiewicz, a starry-eyed kid working in these newsrooms, and of course, you saw a young Katie Couric. You met Tim Russert, like Willard Scott. All of these famous legends of the business were just around you at all times in these newsrooms. It's incredible.
Well,
Um,
I went to visit there the other day. They're plugging my book for me, which
Good.
is very nice of them. Available at Politics and Prose, by the way.
Yes.
The
February
Accidental
2nd
Critic.
event too.
Accidental Critic is the name of it. And anyway, I went over there, and the newsroom is so quiet you can hear a pin drop. And in fact, when people talk loud, like I do,
Yeah.
all heads turn. And it's like, who's that guy making all that
Yeah.
noise? People have headphones and they're working on computers.
Yeah.
It's
It's
so
not the loud days of typewriters and yelling across the
typewriters,
newsroom and smoking.
wire, wire services,
Yeah.
badly behaved people,
Yeah. Right.
coffee pots being kicked and trash cans.
Different era entirely.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I wanted to before we run, I want to talk about what one of the cool things in your book is in between all of these newsroom stories and celebrity encounters and all this. You every couple chapters you remind us of your favorite movies that you reviewed as a movie critic. You'll be like, all right, so from 1980 to 85, here was what I thought then, and here's what I think now. And I just love it. So, what was your approach to your movie reviews?
Did
And
it do what it promised you to get you in there?
yeah,
And was it worth now I guess it's $20 to go to the movies. Back then it was $4. And was it entertaining?
mm,
So entertainment value, and uh, did it do what it promised?
yeah,
A movie makes a promise to you,
yeah,
and then you go and see it, and when it breaks that promise, you walk out
yeah.
disappointed.
And didn't you
Uh,
well, your first one you reviewed back in Texas was American Graffiti, right? But at
yeah, yeah,
NBC4, you was it like a Richard Gere
yeah. It
and
was a
you panned it, and Vance loved that you panned it.
exactly, yes.
Yeah.
I said it looked like a sheet ad. What was that thing? It was Richard Gere and that model.
Jiggle
Yeah, American
American
Gigolo.
Gigolo. Yeah.
Thank you, American Gigolo.
Yeah.
It's probably not as bad as I said it was.
When you were putting together this book, I mean, you and I have talked on your podcast a million times about the various movies that are coming out each year. But when you were putting together Accidental Critic, and you have where you list all your top tens from over the years, and you're looking back on them, are there any where you? I mean, yes, I know there are because I just read it. But
Yes,
but recount
yes,
for this.
yes.
Remind, I guess, our listeners who haven't read it yet. Which an example or so of like some that you were like, oh, that definitely holds up, or some that you're like, why did I include that?
there's so many of why did I include that?
Yeah.
I should have brought a copy of it around here to look. I could thumb through and find all kind of examples, and occasionally
I have it here. I have
things
it here, right here. In 1980, you had. I'm not going to read all 10, but you had Empire Strikes Back and Being There. You said
being
I count
there.
Being There as among my favorites, and you said
Yeah,
you should have included Caddyshack, which wasn't in there.
yeah. I left Caddyshack off. I tell you, another one I left off is The Big Lebowski,
Oh yeah,
and so I
98.
put
Yeah,
that back in. And some of the others have time has changed, and
yeah,
the iPhone has changed, and some of the others are haven't held up because
yeah,
of time. But the ones that are timeless. Uh, the other night, I know I told you this. I watched Big Night, and
yeah,
I loved it more 30 years later than I did when.
yeah.
And I looked back up; it was my number one movie in 1996.
Perfect.
It's such a great movie. But yes, I mean, you do have to look back and say, well, remember War Games?
Yeah, you
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 look
put a
at,
note in there
oh
about
man,
you
what a
said it looks
dog.
dated now. Yeah, yeah,
What a
yeah.
dog. And some of the Star Trek movies, a couple of them people love, but others of them, oh man. And Godfather 3, I think I put that on. What was I thinking? I mean, I would try to make a list that reflected the year.
Right.
Even the latest year, I put Wicked on there. I'm sure in a few years, I'll look back and say, what did I put that on there
No,
for?
Wicked's one. It was it was a blockbuster for the year. I think it's representative of the year. But you're right. You never know 10 years, 20 years how,
No,
what's
no,
gonna
no.
last.
Uh,
Well, I loved it was a total treat getting to see the top 10 list at the end. But I know we're running up against the clock, but I want to remind folks a couple other things. Uh you do a really one of my favorite passages in the book. It's because it's on a serious topic, but it made me laugh out loud, and that says everything about you. When
yes.
you're detailing your fight with colon cancer and surviving it. You
Oh
say,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and here's the actual excerpt. You say, so you're at Channel 4 at this time, and you say my good friend Bobby Abo, who owned the Roma restaurant
Yeah.
across from the Uptown Theater, brought a can of beans. He knew colon surgery patients could not leave the hospital until they passed gas. During Bobby's visit, I achieved that milestone. Farting was such sweet sorrow. I lost it. I lost it. But I love it because but to me, that encapsulates one of the many passages that encapsulates the books because you make us laugh, but while, giving us insight into some serious stuff you went through in your personal life. I love it. I love it.
I saw things as a colon cancer patient that open your eyes,
Yeah.
and whenever I'm in that building, I go back to that place where I took those treatments just to
Yeah.
see who was there and how they're doing,
Yeah.
because that was real life. I saw a high school principal come out after being told there was nothing else they could do for her.
Oh, man.
And that's the stuff of drama.
It really is. You see life and
And
death every day while you're going.
yeah,
And by the way, and we don't have to tangent it too much, but I think I'll just say it. I think that's a little cold that the former head of NBC forced you out right after cancer. I mean, come on. Once you
well,
force out the people that made it a big place, it's not the same place. If you ask.
well, they did not like the manner in which I left,
Yeah.
which was not with my head between my tail, but
Mm.
trying to look into the future. And
Oh
the
yeah, you did a goodbye package, like carrying your
oh
belongings
man,
and
they
walking
did
around.
not want that thing to run. And what really made them mad is the paper interviewed me, and I said, they gave me a choice between retirement and retirement. So I took retirement.
and the one of your bosses quoted it and was not
Oh,
pleased,
and
right?
just hissed it back at
Yeah.
retirement and
Yeah.
retirement.
Yeah.
Hiss.
But then you went to ABC 7, which is when I met you, and News Channel 8. I guess it became JLA.
Right.
When All Britain sold it to Sinclair
And,
later.
you know, we were a group at Channel 7 because it was a group of us from other stations. So really, we were the children of divorce.
Yeah. But it was
we
like
were a
but it was a
blended
huge, yeah. I
family.
mean, Leon Harris comes in. It was almost like another dream team of
Yeah,
other people,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
Bob Ryan go over for a little
Bob
bit?
Ryan was there for a while.
Yeah.
Gordon Peterson, Maureen
Yeah.
Bunyan,
And
and
so you're actually going on Channel 7 doing movie reviews, but then also where I met you was that late night Arch Campbell show. And what I loved about it was, you had different personalities, from
uh,
other
uh,
stations, like I would come on. But it was like purposely wonderfully like low budget. There was like a ladder in the
yes,
background. There was like a
exactly. Yes,
green
a
screen.
dead rat. There was a
Right.
dead rat over
You
there.
really played it up.
Well, that's all I had to work with.
And we would do the Ask Arch mailbag segment, and you would hand me an envelope, and I would read it, and it would be, Angus Lamont.
Same guy. He was a guy I knew at the golf course.
Yeah.
I made him famous. The way I was able to put this book together is I finally had an ending. And the ending was Channel 4, the people who fired me left, and a new generation came, and they've reached out to all the old timers like me. And I was invited back to record some stuff as if I had left under better circumstances.
That's great.
And that was the ending. And then Jim Vance died. And when he died, that was pretty much the end of an era.
Yeah.
And then COVID came and the Uptown Theater closed.
Right.
And that really was the end of an era.
Yeah.
And now we're in the next generation.
Let's sort of close on that note then. What are your thoughts on the future of the industry? I mean, you've shifted to podcasting. First you had the show at Chatter that I would always join you. And that now your show with Lou Katz. But yeah, have you enjoyed the idea of podcasting? I mean, I know it's a whole different game. People would be paying us to have this conversation before. Now we just do it for free for most part.
Well, I'm going to be honest and say I liked it better when you could make a lot of money at it.
Yeah, or even a little money. You can barely even make a living.
Any money.
Yeah. No one has when everyone's a movie critic on YouTube, then no one's a movie critic.
It's it's more democratic these days, and the opportunity is there, and so I suppose you
that's
can
a good
break
thing.
through.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of people that don't know anything about history that are just saying whatever. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Life is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with what's going on. It is wonderful that you can Zoom, you can have people all over the country.
Yeah.
You can have a podcast, you can post a blog.
And you and I can go on these streaming apps and download whatever movie we want throughout history. And it's remastered in high def. So that is one great thing about this.
Even looks better than the nitrate print of The Lady from Shanghai.
So hopefully your flat screen is not catching fire in your living room.
I don't think it will. No.
So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's been an honor to catch up with you and share some of these stories with our listeners. But again, folks, this is just scratching the surface. There are so many. If you liked any of these stories, there are so many more. It's called The Accidental Critic. It is Arch Campbell's memoir. Remind them how they can buy it.
Oh, you can get it at Politics and Prose bookstore. Or you can go on their website, politicsandprose.com. I'm going to be there Saturday night at 5. Doreen Gensler's going to interview me. And if none of that works, call the store and order it direct.
Is it Saturday or Sunday? Is it the second?
Sunday.
Sunday, February 2nd.
It's Groundhog Day.
It's Groundhog Day. So, Arch, tell me your origin story. Groundhog Day, we get to repeat the whole interview. So listeners, go back
Here
to the
we
scrub it
go.
back to the beginning and
Let's
hit
start
replay it
over.
again.
Well, I can do it different this time. Maybe
Well, we
better.
kind of already did. This is actually a part two because there is an older episode. You know what? Past, present, and future, that all it all collides. I love how you appreciate movie history, and that's why I think why we've gotten along over all these years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess we'll close on a personal note. I just want to say thanks for your friendship over all these years. You've been like I don't want to say a father figure, but kind of. You know, you've been a mentor, and I think the world of you.
I was somewhere, and Jim Snyder was there, who was my dear friend I never worked for. And I said, Jim, you've been like a father to me, critical and cruel.
What did he say in response? Thanks, son.
He just thought that was the funniest thing. Cruel and critical.
I'm glad you didn't choose
times.
that for your book title, Cruel and Critical.
Cruel and critical.
No,
I can't tell you how much your friendship means to me.
Yeah.
Your brain and your personality and your love of movies. It's really something I love sharing with you, and your friendship is something I truly cherish. And we are friends because you came over and said hello to me somewhere
at the National Press Club,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And then years later you come to our wedding, me and Ashley, and you
right.
and Gina gifted us an olive oil dispenser, and we think of you every night we use it. So.
Because everything's better with a little olive oil on it.
We'll leave it with that. Everything's better with a little olive oil. All right, everyone. Pick up The Accidental Critic and see Arch Campbell at the book signing and talk at Politics and Prose this Sunday, February 2nd. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.